All right, guys, welcome to week 2 of Algebra 2 online. This week we are going to be solving polynomial equations by factoring. So what we did last week was factored polynomials, and now we're just going to take that one step further, set it equal to 0, and solve. Okay, so for the first example, okay, we have the 3 steps here. Step 1 is to move all terms to one side and set the equation equal to 0. For number 1, that's already done for us, okay? It says equals 0, so we won't have to do anything there. Then step 2 says factor the polynomial completely. Now notice that completely is bolded. We want to make sure that we factor completely before we start solving. And then we're going to set each factor equal to 0 and solve. Okay, so we know how to do this fairly easy for quadratics, things that factor easily. For cubics, for like number 1, the sum of cubes and the difference of cubes, well, number 1 isn't the sum of cubes, but once we get to cubics, we're going to have to start using the quadratic formula, and that's where it gets a little tricky. So let's go ahead and get started with number 1. The first thing we're going to do here is notice we have x cubed in x, so we have a GCF here of x. So if we factor out x, we're left with x squared plus 1 equals 0. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to take each of those factors. We're going to take each of those factors and set each one equal to 0. So we have x is equal to 0 and x squared plus 1 is equal to 0. X equals 0. There's really nothing else to do with that. So one of our solutions is 0. You'll notice that this is a cubic equation. The original is cubic. So that means we should have 3 solutions. So one solution is x is equal to 0. Okay, and then the next one, when we solve here, watch what happens. Okay, we're going to start by subtracting 1 from both sides. So if we subtract 1 from both sides, we get x squared is equal to -1. Okay, x squared is equal to -1. So from there, to get rid of a square, you take the square root. And anytime in solving, when you take the square root, remember that you're going to get 2 answers. You're going to get the plus and minus. Okay, and then what is the square root of -1? Well, since it's negative, okay, we know that it's imaginary, so we're going to have I in our solution, and the square root of 1 is 1. So the answer is plus or minus I. So we have 3 solutions. I, negative I, and 0. Okay. For number 2, what we're going to do is we are going to first set it equal to 0. So we need to subtract this 3x squared over, and we get 4x cubed, and -7 minus 3 is -10. X squared is equal to 0. Okay, so from here we will factor. Notice there's a GCF. The GCF is 2x squared Okay, so if we factor out a 2x squared, we'll be left with 2x minus 5. Okay, so now we have factored completely, and we are going to set each factor equal to 0. Okay, I like to separate all of my factors by this little chart. Okay, so I have 2x squared equals 0 and 2x minus 5 equals 0. And I'll solve both of them for x. When I solve 2x squared equals 0, okay, I'm just going to get x is equal to 0. Okay, because if you do 0 divided by 2, that's still 0. The square root of 0 is 0, plus or minus 0 is just 0. Okay, and then I will solve over here by adding 5 to both sides. So I get 2x is equal to 5. Divide both sides by 2. X is equal to 5 over 2. Okay, so here it is a cubic equation, so we should have 3 answers. However, I only got 2 answers. I got the answer of 0 and 5 over 2. But remember that 0, okay, x is equal to 0 was actually a 0 2 times, okay, because it was plus or minus 0. So that is where our third solution comes in. Just waiting for my camera to catch up. And then we're going to move on to number 3. Okay, for number 3, this is the difference of 2 squares. Okay, this is the difference of 2 perfect squares. So when we factor this, okay, we're going to take the square root of each. And the square root of x to the 4th is x squared. And the square root of 64 is 8. And then it's plus minus. Okay, I cannot factor either one of those any further, so I'm going to go straight to setting each one equal to 0. X squared plus 8 equals 0. X squared minus 8 equals 0. Okay, and then I'll start solving. So in this case, I'm going to subtract 8 from both sides, and I get x squared is equal to negative 8. And then you take the square root. So x is equal to plus or minus the square root of negative 8. And let's go ahead and break that down. Okay, what's the largest perfect square that's a factor of 8? And the answer is 4. So we also have a negative in there. So if I take out a 4, I get x is equal to plus or minus. The square root of 4 is 2. So it's 2i square root 2. Okay, notice we have I because we're taking the square root of a negative. All right, then I have x squared minus 8 equals 0. So if I add 8 to both sides, I have x squared is equal to positive 8. I'll take the square root. So x is equal to plus or minus the square root of 8, and then we're going to break that down. So it's the largest perfect square that's a factor of 8. We know that's 4. 4 times 2 is 8, and the square root of 4 is 2. Okay, notice we have 4 answers here. We have positive 2i square root 2, negative 2i square root 2, and then we have positive 2 square root 2 and negative negative 2 square root 2. All right, next we are going to look at number 4. And number 4, we're going to factor out a GCF first. And the GCF there is 5x. So if we factor out a 5x, we're left with x to the 4th minus 16. And then notice we can factor x to the 4th minus 16 with dots, difference of 2 squares. So don't forget about x or 5x on the outside, that's your GCF. And then I have x squared plus 4, x squared minus 4. Now notice we have dots one more time with x squared minus 4. So I will factor that again. Whoa, sorry, the camera fell over. All right, let's let this mess clean up. Okay, so we have 5x, x squared plus 4, x plus 2, x minus 2. So notice we have 5 factors here that we are going to set equal to 0. So we have 5x equals 0, x squared plus 4 equals 0, x plus 2 equals 0, and x minus 2 equals 0. Five x equals 0. We'll just get an answer of x equals 0. Divide both sides by 5. Here we're going to have x squared equals negative 4. If we take the square root of negative 4, we get plus or minus 2i. X plus 2 equals 0 means x is equal to negative 2. X minus 2 equals 0 means x is equal to positive 2. So notice we have 5 answers there. We have 0, positive 2i, negative 2i, negative 2, and positive 2. All right, so I am going to stop this video here. This is factoring and setting equal to 0 to find our solutions. We didn't do any sum of cubes or difference of cubes, but I think I'm going to hold off until next week with that. So here are 4 examples, and you'll have 4 problems to do on your assessment, and I will give you your homework as well in the post. Have a great week.